And it was at that point that I realized a three-wheel bicycle does not turn like a regular bicycle does. Of all the inventions I have ever made, my three-wheel bike has got to be one of the coolest and most eye-catching ones I think I've built. Now, my original three-wheel bicycle idea came and it kind of started mulling around in my head right about the time I built my sail car. Now, my sail car, it's only on my channel for a little bit, but it's got a 15-foot high PVC mast and it had three 26-inch tires. Now, at the time, I could not weld, so I ended up building it all by bolting together wood pieces and kind of building this frame that you then sat on and you'd ride in and steer with this half of a bicycle that was actually my dad's bicycle that he didn't necessarily give me approval to use for the project. He found out later that the reason I wanted his bicycle was to turn it into a sail car. So that's a side story. Anyway, I'm sitting there sailing this sail car, and I think to myself, it would be a really great thing if I could put the mast more forward, get the wind out in front of me more, and have a means of still propelling it, because that sail car was not propelled. You had to tow it everywhere. So what I ended up doing was I came up with this idea for a three-wheel bike. Problem was I couldn't weld. So eventually, about a year later, I'm studying, I'm learning to weld. My dad's teaching me a little bit. We get a new welder, and I'm finally able to weld. Now it's like, it's time to build this bicycle. I can do it. And then it hits me. How in the world do you connect the tires on this bicycle together? I mean, I hadn't dealt with steering linkages yet, so I start doing some research, and I see all these cool steering linkages people are making with metal. I can't buy stuff, though I don't have a lot of money. So what I end up coming up with, and I'm sitting in church one day, and I'm looking at this beautiful picture of a three-wheel bicycle I've drawn, and I realize I could use a 2x4 and do the same thing as a steering linkage by simply moving a screw in or out to actually get the tires to line up in the correct position, and I'll have one central screw that will line up the handlebars. And there it was, I was able to get to work. So I started off, the first thing I did was I went and I got two 20-inch bike frames that I actually garbage picked. I actually think I ended up with parts of three on there eventually. But I get those, kind of lay them out on the ground, and then I go and I get some different parts of shells. So I'm going around the house trying to find every single piece of scrap metal I could possibly find to use for a frame. I'm pulling like old shelf stuff out that's hidden behind the shed. I'm going over to my grandparents. I'm digging through what they have. And one of the key things to this build that I actually ended up finding was I found this like super cool kind of clamp light, or not necessarily a clamp light, but like a construction light. And this construction light would come up and it had these two lights on it, and it would shine out over a work area. Except that this one's halogen bulbs had died. So I thought that stand is the same diameter frame as the bike frame. So I can actually slide these together and I can build myself a sort of setup bicycle here with this, of all things, work light frame in the middle. So that's what I ended up doing. And the piece for the front section of it, I now believe, I didn't actually know what it was. I garbage picked it, and what I believe it was now is like a section of drain pipe that somebody had been throwing out. But anyway, I get all these scrap pieces, I put it together, and we're ready to go for a test ride. So I get on this bicycle, and we're riding it up to the first stoplight. We're sitting there, and people are just looking at us like, what in the world are you doing? That is like, they've never seen something like this before. It was absolutely hilarious to see their expressions on their faces. And then my brother's with me. He was going to do some filming, but at the time we weren't really doing a lot. We were just like, let's go try this. So he didn't have the camera out when it happened, but we're going down this hill. We always go down this hill to the lake, and we normally do a lap around the lake to test whatever we happen to be wanting to test at the moment. A new bicycle, a new skateboard, just anything we're taking out as kids. So we get going down this hill, and it's a pretty good slant. It's like at least a 30-40 degree slant, and this hill's probably about a quarter of a mile long. So we're getting down to the end of it, and you've got to turn at the end. And it was at that point that I realized a three-wheel bicycle does not turn like a regular bicycle does. Because a regular bicycle, you lean into the corner and you just bank right around it, and it's super easy. The three-wheel bicycle does not lean. So what ended up happening is here I come barreling down this hill. I was probably going at least 17, 18 miles an hour. And I come up to that corner and I need to turn right. And I realize I can't lean and the bicycle's tire just starts lifting. And I'm turning and I'm looking over and I'm seeing the bicycle tire about 2 feet in the air and it's just hovering there and we're going around this corner. I'm like, when I finally get the bike back on the ground, and it was like, man, I almost crashed. I almost went off the side into this guy's house. I was like, whoa, that was way, way too close. So I'm chilling out, and we complete our lap, and we're coming back, and this guy comes up to us, and he's like, kind of stops us. He's like, what is that? I'm like, well, it's a three-wheel bike. We designed it, we built it, and we're out on our first test ride. And at this point, it's not painted, so you can see every different color on it. I almost wish I had left it that way because it was kind of funny. Because we had yellow, we had orange, we had black, we had like parts from this thing that wasn't even painted. It was like this weird brown color, and it's all just hodgepodge together. And it was just hilarious. And this guy just couldn't believe it, and he's just like, "Good job, keep up the work." And we definitely took that to the next level. But we continue with this bike, and we end up spray painting it black, which is the form you see it most on my channel, and it just looked beautiful in that. And we end up mounting a front fender on it so that we could like go through some brush and stuff. And then we get the idea to off-road it. Now, the idea for off-roading it originated because we're doing a lap around a local park. And we're going around this park, and we do it every once in a while, but this time it was in about March, and they still had these giant hills of snow that the park district comes and they pile them up and get it off of the street, basically. But they melted down to the point where it's all ice, and you could walk on them. And we get the idea, well, we can ride the three-wheel bike on it. It's be a good test drive, so we start doing that, and it was really a lot of fun to take off-roading because you could do all this low-speed maneuver stuff that you couldn't really do on a regular bicycle because you simply can't go slow enough. You're literally rock crawling the bicycle. So when the snow finally melted, we needed to find another place to do it. And we come up with this kind of like old forest preserve that wasn't really well maintained. It's got a bunch of muddy trails in it. Even some off-road guys used to sneak back in there and do some off-roading. And we'd go back there, and there was a little creek that went through that the trails went through. And I think there may have been a bridge at one time, but it wasn't there anymore because it hadn't been maintained. So we'd ride the bike through the water, and just a lot of fun. But what finally happened was we started taking this bicycle to different meetups around town with our friends. And normally they were on like a Friday night. You'd ride over on a Friday night and come back at like midnight. So we had a couple close calls with cars where they couldn't see the bicycle. And we get thinking to ourselves, we need a way for this bicycle to be more visible. So what we ended up doing was we mounted this old bicycle light to it on the bottom because we couldn't get it to stay on the handlebars for some reason. It just wouldn't clamp down. And we found this old generated bicycle light. So it had this little generator, and it must have been from like the 1970s or something because we got it from my grandparents' house. And we strapped it on the back tire, and it would go ring as you're riding it, and it would shine the light out in front of us so we'd have some way to navigate. And we'd normally put that one out in front, and then we'd put like a 5-gallon cooler, like what you see at all the sport teams meet up. They've got those 5-gallon coolers for their water or whatever they have in it. And we'd put one of those in the front, filled up normally about halfway. And that way we could take it to our friends for meeting up and just hanging out. But we're doing that one time, and we're at this park, and one of my friends wants to try the bicycle. And he's a pretty big dude, and he gets on the bike, and he's going to go over this curb with it, which normally, we've been riding the bike probably 3 years at this point, and we'd had it in all sorts of different scenarios, and it was pretty beat up. And let me remind all of you guys, this was built from scrap metal that probably shouldn't have been used for this purpose. But he's taking it over this curve, and all of a sudden we just hear this crack, and the frame just breaks in half. And that was it. The bike was done. We drag it back to my house, and we're looking at it, we're thinking about repairing it, and it's at that point that I've had some welding practice now on a lot of other projects. I'd actually built my bigger two-wheel version bike, my cruiser bike, my long transport bike, I guess you could call it, and I realized that the metal we'd used on this three-wheel bike just wasn't worth using anymore. It was totaled, it was rusted out, all that going through the water and stuff was just a problem. So ended up scrapping out most of the frame. We did keep two sections, which are actually now on my bicycle trailer. The two back tire sections that hold the back tires on that are actually the front tires on that three-wheel bicycle build. So those have been in my use for probably about 10 years now, and it's just a fun story because we keep reusing the parts. They keep getting turned into new creations, and they'll probably continue to be used to make new things, and it's just kind of neat. But I miss that bicycle. One of these days I may get around to building another one, because the funniest part, after all these times thinking about sailing it, I never actually took that bicycle sailing once. So, in a way, you could say the story isn't complete because I never did go sailing with that bicycle. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to comment below and let me know what you think. I'll be happy to do stories of what's happened with some of my other builds. I know you guys don't get to see it on my channel, but I thought it'd be really fun to tell you a little bit about the behind the scenes, what we do with these projects, and the fun we have. So, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Patriot Contraptions signing out and hoping you have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next episode.